I really want for people to dispel the myth that networking is all about being phony. Like when you're meeting people, you should be trying to be your most genuine, authentic self, not just to extract stuff from people, but really to forge relationships because networking is not about, oh, let me talk to Trevis so he can give me a job recommendation. No, it's like, let me talk to Trevis, learn about his journey, find out, what he's thinking, pick his brain about things that I don't know about. It's not just about
Yeah.
asking somebody for a job. I think that's what people often think networking is, and that's not it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the How I Got Here podcast. I'm your host, Trevis Waters. I designed this podcast to share stories that are worth telling. Whether it's about somebody going from zero to hero, hero to zero, or simply something in between. On today's episode, we talked to Erica, who's pretty much spent her entire time in the sports industry, mainly the sports broadcasting space. But let's go ahead and hop into our conversation with her now. Enjoy. Hey guys, welcome to the How I Got Here podcast. I'm your host, Trevis Waters, and on this episode, we are joined by Erica, who I believe I've known for about the last 2 years or so in the space. But for those who may have not met you before, don't know you by name or by face, let's do a quick 10-second high-level overview of where you are right now in your career in 2026.
Hi, guys. Erica Renee Davis here, sports betting journalist, content creator. I cover the entire spectrum of sports betting, but also cover sports from a strictly sports perspective, motorsports, college football, NFL, college basketball, NBA, and more.
I already have 20 questions that just populated in my head based on all that, but we'll get there eventually. So how I like starting these off is for you to tap into the memory bank of the earliest possible memory you have of you thinking of something along the lines of, this is what I want to do when I grow up, this is what I want to be when I grow up, or this is something I have extreme amount of interest in. And roughly how old were you when you had that first initial idea?
Okay, so when it comes to sports betting, particularly, I really don't think I realized I wanted to have a career in sports betting until 2011. So recent-ish, kind of. That wasn't something that I grew up thinking, oh, I want to do this. As a little girl, as a teenager, that wasn't really a thing. I mean, I had an uncle who introduced me to sports betting once I moved from Georgia, which is where I'm from originally, to Los Angeles. And my Uncle James, was a degenerate horse race bettor. And that is what really got me into sports betting. Now, sports, just strictly sports. I grew up in a small town. I always tell people my hometown of Waycross, Georgia, has two Walmarts, one high school. We actually have a Super Bowl champion, Ernest Jones, who's a linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks. So shout out to the 9-1 Deuce. But it's a very small town where sports is king. And just growing up as a daddy's girl, so somewhat of a tomboy, I always imagined that I would have a career in sports, and then went to the University of Georgia where I danced on the basketball dance team, was a majorette for the Red Coat Marching Band, cheered for the Atlanta Falcons, double majored in broadcast and political science. So everything was aligning for me to have some kind of involvement with sports post college. So that was in my bones from day one. Sports betting came a lot later, especially because our industry, admittedly, hasn't always been hasn't been seen in the most positive light.
Yeah, well, I would be very taken back if you would have led with, oh, when I was 5 years old, I was like, sports betting's gonna be my thing. So before we get into that kind of part of the interest in the career, can we rewind just a little bit beyond that? So I know you said sports is in your bones and your blood and everything. What was the very first thing I want to be an athlete, or I want to be a coach? Was it sports related, or was the very first interest, even if it was completely outside of the sports spectrum, kind of what was the age when you had that first interest, regardless of what it was?
I would say 5 or 6 years old. I remember tagging along with my daddy to our local high school football games. And at that time, we had a county school system, which was called Ware County, and then a city school system, which was Waycross. And the Ware County were the Gators. We were the Gators, and then Waycross was the Bulldogs. And so we would go to Waycross High School football games. And again, I was 5 or 6 years old. I would get super dressed up, tag along with my daddy. And I was like, I want to do something in sports. At that time, I didn't care if it was playing football, if it was dancing, twirling. I just knew I had to be around that environment. And again, as a 5 year old, 6 year old, you don't, or I at least didn't have a clear cut vision of what that involvement looked like. But I just knew something about the atmosphere, the energy of being at a football game, the band playing, the listening to the cheerleaders, hearing the swishing of the palms, if you will, the pageantry that is always involved and revolves around a Friday night football game in the South is what got me many, many moons ago. And that feeling has carried me through childhood, adulthood, and to now a career in sports.
When you first were going over that, the picture I was having is from Remember the Titans with super young Hayden Panettiere kind of sitting next to her daddy as you kind of were saying, and she's just like screaming at the players and the coaches and stuff as like it's in her blood. So I just kind of picture that like remind me of that movie. So I know you said you didn't know, especially this early on, kind of where you wanted to take that sports interest journey, but now we're going from like 5 to 6. Let's say 13, 14, high school time. Are we already kind of knowing it's going to be going into sports journalism this time, or the education, or how's that interest transforming into the high school years?
So I always tell people, as someone who works on air, as you do, obviously, that you have to, at least I believe, you either have to or need to try to learn how to be a fabulous writer. And my mom, God rest her soul, was a retired English educator. So growing up from the time, honestly, like Trevis, I can't even remember a time in my life where I did not have to practice some form of creative writing, journaling, writing short stories, reading Shakespeare, reading the Canterbury Tales. Like that was what my childhood was shaped by. And so I knew that yes, I wanted to work in sports, but I also knew that I wanted to have some kind of journalism career in sports. But at the same time, I began running track in middle school and then eventually high school. Again, I was a dancer in the band even in high school. So in my mind, I knew that I was a writer and I knew that I could bring life to words. And I also figured, okay, if I'm a writer, I'm a good writer. I can bring, this livelihood, this life, this, imagination, pen to paper or computer, whatever, keyboard to the screen. I want to figure out a way to tell these stories. Again, as a high school student, I think I employed that by being on the yearbook staff, being a features editor for the yearbook staff, covering some of my high school classmates as they pursued their journeys in football and in basketball. But again, just really using the foundation of having a mom as an English professor, instilling in me the importance of storytelling and creating and curating narratives. That is what I think set the foundation for me to be able to tell the stories as I got older and as I went to college.
So what was the college degree that you aimed for?
So I doubled in broadcast journalism and political science. And then let me tell you, in my household, we did not get a chance to watch a lot of television growing up. I mean, as we got a little bit older, we could watch The Cosby Show back before we knew what we know now. We could watch The Fresh Prince. We could watch like TGIF. Do you remember TGIF on Friday nights with
Of
like
course I do.
Family Matters and whatever else came on TGIF. So we could watch that. But other than that, we could watch CNN and like other news programs. And we had to read and we had to talk. We had to sit around the dining room table and talk about current events and politics. So that is how I ended up doubling in broadcast news and political science. Grew up in a house that my parents were very politically aware, very politically active, made sure that we understood that we needed to use our voices in a political way. And then also, again, broadcast journalism. That to me, just those two things just went hand in hand. Um, I think that being an athlete, running track, being a dancer, being a majorette, I did not want to have a focus in sports management or in sports particularly, just because I don't know. I just felt more attracted to the diehard broadcast journalism side. But let's be honest though, Travis. Let's be completely honest. I think a part of me was like, oh, I'm gonna be a 5 o'clock news anchor. I learned really quickly that was not what I wanted to do.
Was that last part there? Was that because you had that experience and you're like, oh, this isn't for me, or just thinking about it like, no, 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 I don't want to be that news person?
Well, so back in the day, you had to, and maybe this is still the case, but if you wanted to have a career as an anchor, you had to start off in a really small market. You had to start off in like, I don't want to use bad words, but Bumble, you know what, like backwoods, the sticks. And I was from a small town. Again, two Walmarts, one high school. I didn't feel like I needed to go from small town, South Georgia to Athens, which is where the University of Georgia is, back to a small town. But also, I moved to LA when YouTube was becoming a thing. And I was like, there's this whole world outside of having to go do it the traditional way of going to a small market of 3,000 people. And so that is, I think, when I started interviewing for jobs and going to places like Toccoa Falls, no shade to Toccoa Falls, Georgia, going places like in small town North Georgia, I was like, this is not for me. This is not my vibe. I can't be doing this. And that is when I think I was like, okay, let me move to LA. Let's explore what the world looks like out of small town America and putting my imprint on being on air and covering sports.
So it wasn't necessarily the actual being on air as the sports caster. It was the process of getting to the level of you where you wanted to be, and it did that make sense for that. And I, I, one of the things I say I love the most about doing this podcast is I love the parallels that I have with everybody else's story. So an exact same thing, which is also sports related. There is something that's called the Scouting Academy, which is a
Mhm.
very very robust. Dan runs this amazing program that's like you just these are all the things you have to look at. Watch this game tape and tell me what you think about so and it teaches you everything you need to know. And I do this process, and it's like a semester long online, watching a ton of videos, and then all of a sudden I'm like, this is a lot of stuff, which I'm okay with, but like I'm doing this before I even discovered the process. Like I want to be a GM of an NFL team. How do I
Mm.
get from where I am now to there? I'm like, okay, so it starts at I mean, I think I was looking at the time like, oh, hey, the entry level research intern's like 20K a year. I was like, I don't think that I can put this amount of time and effort in for that, which I understand that's just the process. And I think because I
Right.
started too late in life with
Mm.
that concept, if I was still in college, like the internship stuff makes sense, which is probably when you should start doing that. But I was
Yeah.
already outside of that, and I was like, "Oh, I don't have. Nope, I can't grow in that tree. I can't just become an NFL GM like I want to do." Um,
Travis, I,
something,
I will say this too. I
yeah,
do want to say this. I don't want to shit on people who go the small town route
yeah,
because I do think there's value in that. But additionally, in addition to, having a mom who was an English professor, having a dad who was diehard, who played football in high school, who had dreams of going pro, I was a musical theater kid. So I grew up dancing, singing, acting, doing stage plays, being very active in our community theater program, choreographing, all the things that a performer does. So for me, I knew that there was another avenue than just going back to small town America. Again, there is so much value in doing it. I don't want to say the right way because I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to do it, but there's value in doing it the traditional way. As a matter of fact, when I started interviewing with bigger platforms, a lot of the decision makers would ask me, like, where's your sideline reporter tape? Where's where's your stand-ups from so and so, television station? I didn't have that to show them. I was like, oh, I have a YouTube show. I'm hosting Two Girls on Sports on this YouTube channel, which again, 2010, people were like, huh? YouTube? Like, what are you talking about? So I think having not done things a traditional way might have in some way impeded some opportunities for me. But I learned and grew in so many other ways that I'm not mad at it. I just don't want people who are listening and watching to think they should circumvent that because I do think that there can be value in that if that's your chosen path.
yeah. So you mentioned throughout high school you were very athletic as well as doing all of this, this stuff, getting you towards this journalism opportunity. So, when you went to college, because I mean, going from doing all of that stuff to then going to a double major, did you
Mhm.
still continue the athleticism? Were you doing any kind of track or anything like that, intramurals or whatever?
Right. Okay. So this is one of my favorite stories to tell people, and a lot of people don't know this. So when I got to Georgia, I had already made the basketball dance team my senior year of high school, and I had also made the majorette line. So in the South, those of you watching, listening, baton twirling is a really, really big deal. It's very prestigious. It's very competitive. And so I had tried out for the majorette line at Georgia my senior year of high school. April made it. Same thing for Dance Dogs, which is a basketball dance team. Tried out April, May, made it. Went into my freshman year at Georgia knowing that I was going to be on campus in August for band camp. And then knowing once band, like football season was over, actually, football season and basketball season overlap. So knowing I was going to be dancing. So for 4 years, I did that. But the dance team, the basketball dance team, would train on the track that the track and field team used. And one of the coaches one day was like, he watched my mile. He watched me do my mile for training for Dance Dogs, and he was like, I would love to have you walk on. Like, think about it. And I pretty quickly said no. I don't know like how much time I quote unquote thought about it, but I was like, oh, track interferes with the dance season, and that is one of my biggest regrets. Like I was invited or asked to walk on at Georgia, and I did not. But all that being said, I danced and twirled all 4 years at Georgia, and then one of the semesters I actually cheered for the Falcons. So I did all of that. My double major was a sorority girl. I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, which, as you might know, the Divine Nine is a lifelong commitment. So I pledged in college. I'm still a member, still an active financial member. Broadcast news, political science, choreographing, like all the things. I was tired. I'm tired. I'm tired thinking about it.
So
Tired.
you're a slacker, is what you're trying to tell us.
Well, you
Gotcha.
know what? Listen, those grades sometimes those grades were the first thing to go because one thing that I was going to do was make sure my performances were on point and to make sure I was very active on the social scene.
Now you mentioned a minute or so ago that you also did musical theater. Was that just high school, or was that part of your college experience as well?
I didn't do any musical theater in college. I did not. That was just from the time I was like 5 or 6 through middle school through high school, and then once I got to college, I didn't have time for it.
I
Yeah,
was
that.
yeah. I
Yeah.
was like, I don't. I was about to say like, I don't know where you where you can squeeze any of that stuff in with all the rehearsal time and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't. I know when we last spoke, when we ran into each other at a conference, that I don't know if I can't remember if I knew anything about on the musical theater side of you, because that's where my background is before I got into this space, where my degree is in acting theater from here in UCF. And I know, I'm like, man, it's just there's so many things that you're saying. I was like, yeah. I remember that path. I don't know if you would consider Florida the South, because I know what you mean when you say the South. In regards to like, well, in the South, like, there's this and this. So I'm definitely familiar with Georgia in terms of the athletics and everything like that as well. So we finish. Do we finish both of the double majors at Georgia?
We finished. It took me a little bit of extra time, but I finished. And I like that you mentioned too, Travis, that you were a musical theater kid. And I think that having grown up, and you might agree, maybe you disagree. I don't know, you tell me. I think that having grown up with that background contributes so much to being a well-rounded individual. Maybe, I wasn't active in musical theater in college, and I don't know if you're still active in the musical theater community now that you have a career in sports and in fantasy and in betting. But even if you're not, I personally feel that that foundation set me up for so much success. Just learning how to have a stage presence, knowing how to take over a room, knowing how to listen. No, in acting, it's about listening and responding and being present in the moment. And those things, I think, are invaluable in any career, but especially in the chosen career paths that you and I have.
No, 100% agree. Where there's for essentially what I do now is it's the culmination of everything on my resume that kind of built into all of this. So factoring on the theatrical side, I mean the first part of on the acting side of me being somebody that's not me, being able to do anything on a stage in front of hundreds of people, it builds that ability for you to. Maybe you're going to do a pitch competition, or maybe you're going to be a panelist on a stage, and there's never like there's no ounce of stage fright in my soul since like the age of, I don't think ever. I feel like I've always been doing things performance wise, and then now, prior, I want to say the last, maybe the last 6 or 7 years of the main entertainment focus of my career has been game show hosting, to where I'm not being someone else. I'm being Trevis, and I have a microphone and I'm hosting, and that is, I feel like, a big catalyst to why my YouTube content is so successful, and loved by my community, is where there's a lot of people that aren't as comfortable so with them being themselves on a microphone on camera, and so what they do is they try to have this persona, which, I mean, there's a lot of like big name people that may or may not make appearances on ESPN, that they're just like, I'm like, that can't be that person in real life. That cannot
Mhm,
be their
mhm.
personality. And I feel like it's that same way where I'm not trying to be somebody I'm not when I do these shows. It's, this is Travis. I'm on a microphone. Let me help you lose less and win more. And
Mhm.
it's not like that crazy over exaggerated personality of screaming into the microphone, or what have you. So yeah, long story short, I definitely do credit that that part of my life as being successful in different pieces of what I do now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now we finished the double major. We worked our butt
Yes.
off in college, and I know you've already mentioned that you went to LA. Now, between these two events of
Mhm.
graduating in LA, this 2010, I believe you said, which, yes,
Mhm.
very, very, very early into the YouTube stage.
Yeah.
Um, how was that thought process? Was it, oh, there's something happening, I can create videos, I can do what I want to do, let me go over here and put the pedal to the metal on increasing this as much as possible? Or was there other things as well involved that kind of brought you to that, oh, I need to go to LA?
So the moving to LA was really tapping back into that musical theater performer background. I was like, I'm gonna move to LA or New York and I'm gonna be famous. Like that's what that was about. It wasn't about the broadcast news or political science. It was about let's get on television. And I did. You know, I moved to LA. I had a dance agent right away, have been in numerous national commercials, print campaigns as a model, like did the whole thing straight to DVD. Kids out there listening who don't know what DVDs are, back in the 2010s, we used to have DVDs and Blu-ray.
I don't know if there's any kids that are watching or listening to this. Maybe, who knows? Well, yeah, I guess I'm not factoring in how old I am now, so never mind. I take that message back.
So there might be somebody like who's 22 listening who might not
Yeah,
know
yeah,
what
yeah.
or DVD is or Blu-ray. So had a few straight to DVD like B, C grade horror movies. Did that whole thing. Um, but the whole YouTube, dipping my toe into YouTube, it was really, I was very conflicted. Again, coming from a very structured South Georgia upbringing where you wanted to do everything right. I remember when I would have I would meet with some of my professors that would come out here for our University of Georgia broadcast news summer semesters, and I would meet with them, you know, as a student who had moved out, who was now doing the LA thing, and I would talk to them about YouTube, and instead of talking about being a journalist, I would call it hosting. And I remember one of my professors was like, hosting? What is hosting? And I was like, oh, I'm hosting a show on YouTube called Two Girls on Sports. They were like, hosting? Do you mean? And so I just remember feeling somewhat insecure about deviating from that path because, again, YouTube was so new. The original content that folks were just uploading was so new. And it wasn't what I went to school for. I went to school to be a diehard journalism. I mean, a diehard journalist, to 5 o'clock news, 5 o'clock anchor you know, anything outside of that to me at that time was on the fringe. And my professors pretty much told me that much when they would come out to visit. So I was very reticent, honestly, Travis, very reticent. But what really got me going was Kevin Pollak used to have a network called it was called the This Weekend Network. And underneath the umbrella, there was This Week in Football, This Week in Politics, This Week in whatever. And I was the host and one of the producers of This Week in Football. And that was 2011, 2012. And that is where my betting career, if you will, started. And that was when I really began to feel comfortable doing YouTube and podcasts. That was one of the OG podcast networks. But before then, I was a little bit ashamed, honestly, because it wasn't what was normal. It wasn't what was kosher. It was not what was on the linear path of making it to Oprah or Robin Roberts or, whomever. Um, but yeah,
So 2010 was the finished college, and then the move was seemed to be relatively soon after that.
yeah.
Mainly chasing the acting and performing dreams. When you're in LA doing this, and I after we're done recording, need a list of all those movies because I the straight to DVD horror movies are the best kind. So I definitely need to get that list.
They
But
were awful. I mean, let,
those are
let
but
me, let
those are the
me
best kind though. Even the ones that are awful, whether it's on purpose or by accident, are the best movies.
yeah.
So how long did that mindset of I want to be a performer, I want to be an actress, and you keep doing these things? How long did that last? From the minute you got in LA to where it's like, okay, I'm going to start sprinkling in a little bit more of my interest, which is sports, the journalism side of things. How long did that take before that shift happened?
Well, that's interesting that you asked me that because I was literally just telling someone this the other day. I was speaking with a young lady who is pivoting in her career, and she asked me essentially, Erica, when did you pivot away from entertainment strictly into sports? And the truth of the matter is, I never put all my eggs in one basket. When I moved here, yes, I had a dance agent. Yes, I was booking national commercials as a dancer, print campaigns, straight to DVD, horror movies, straight to Blu-ray horror movies. But Kevin Pollak, that This Weekend Network, This Weekend Football show happened pretty early on. So I always was exploring my interest in the sports world while I was simultaneously dancing, acting, auditioning. And, I told this young lady this other day, to some, that could be a recipe for disaster. Some people might say, well, you never, just gave one thing your everything. But again, to me, I was a jack of many trades, woman of many talents. And I could not at that time fathom just pursuing entertainment. I couldn't fathom not exploring my love for sports. So always kind of had my foot in both worlds. And it wasn't until, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but it wasn't until the pandemic where I was like, okay, let me strictly focus on sports. But up until then, honey, I was doing it all. You could catch me on a commercial, you could catch me on CNN talking sports, you could catch me in the print campaign for Target. I was not letting anyone define me by just one skill set.
Yeah, I think because of what you essentially put yourself through high school and through college of always like multifaceted, juggling a lot of things at once, and also not just juggling a lot of things because anybody can juggle a lot of things, but having success juggling a
Hmm.
lot of things, it creates this. I guess the word they use is character. I wouldn't say character flaw, but a character piece of you to where if you're like, oh, I can do multiple things. I crushed it in high school. I crushed it in college. So let me just keep that mindset going. So I mean, that makes perfect sense. So we're I know you were mentioning pandemic in 2020, and so I believe you mentioned early on that this sports betting journalistic opportunity came. So would you say was that like 2011, 2012, a couple years into LA?
Yeah, 2011, 2012 was This Weekend Network, which I was the host and one of the producers of This Week in Football. And we had a bookie who would call in from Florida, actually.
It was
Don't
me.
know what's name. It wasn't Travis. You know what? Now that I think about it, it really could have been you. Had a bookie whose name I did not know. He was the personal bookie of one of the guys, one of the hosts, co-hosts of the show. And he would call in and give his I can't say sharp insight because he's a bookie, but his insight on whatever the odds were, and we would do our picks. Again, this is 2011, 2012. So at this time, this is slightly illegal. It's very, very nefarious, if you will. We were living on the edge. And that was my foray into actually working on air with lines and odds and a bookie, an odds maker, if you will.
So, how long did that specific responsibility or that opportunity lasts before it either you gain more responsibility, more opportunity within that same network, or things grew beyond that?
So things grew beyond that, and or I think This Weekend Network just folded. Honestly, I don't really know what happened to This Weekend Network. I should look it up. But Kevin Pollak is a very successful actor. So maybe, his career went a different direction and that wasn't one of his priorities. I really do not know what happened to the network. But after that, I used to do some hits for Bet US. And for all of you sports bettors out there, we all know that Bet US is technically offshore betting. But again, this is 2012, 2013, when whether you were, I mean, everything was offshore, right? Like everything around that time was offshore. There was no FanDuel, no DraftKings, BetMGM. I mean, it was all offshore accounts. So I started doing some hits for BetUS in 2013, and oh, Trevis, I mean, I would love to find some of these videos because I mean, it's been 13 years, but I think they branded me the betting babe or something so super generic and cheesy. And I would just get on there and like get my pick and was still at that time learning the space. So if you ran across my betting babe, Bet US profile many, many moons ago, please forgive me. I cannot be held responsible for anything that I was saying because I was literally learning on the fly. I was learning on the fly. So that was a little bit less meaty than the This Weekend Network responsibility, but it was a little bit more high profile because it was a sports book. I was working for a sports book. So that's what came next in the betting world.
So when you're doing all of this and creating all this content, are you there's two different mindsets. I'm trying to see which one you were in. Did you have the mindset of, oh, this is an interesting space. I'm having some fun doing this. Let me think, what can this become 5, 10 years? Like, what's the path of this specific new thing that doesn't really exist in this space? Or are you just kind of, um, I don't know, what's the cliche idiom? Flying by your coattails or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a little bit of both. I mean, I hate to like walk in the gray area, but I think it was a little bit of both. I think I was trying to find my niche because I used to take a hosting class. I won't name the hosting coach, but and not for anything wrong, but I just remember one of her things was find your brand. Like make sure you have a brand. And I used to go to her hosting class. Again, my professors were like, hosting, what's hosting? You have a degree in broadcast journalism from the University of Georgia. What are you talking about? But my hosting coach would say, you have to have a brand. Erica, it's great that you love sports. It's great that you're a former athlete. But what makes you different from anybody else? And it was really through that class that I was like, well, maybe betting will be what makes me different than anybody else. And truthfully, in the beginning, I didn't love it. Like, I didn't love it because I am such a diehard Bulldog and I'm so diehard about my teams and about who I'm cheering for that I didn't like the emotional conflict of knowing my team wasn't going to cover and hoping they didn't cover, but hoping that they won. I couldn't separate it at first. Like that to me, when you're just starting off, takes an emotional lift. It's an emotional lift. So, but at the same time, I was getting to the coaching of you got to have a brand. Erica, everybody has a microphone. Everybody wants to do sports. Everybody covers sports. What makes you different? And I was like, well, shit, this makes me different. I better
Well,
lean into this. And
it,
so that's really what happened.
I mean, that makes sense. So, the question I had about that was, so you're creating your own brands,
Hmm.
you're in sports betting. You're having interest in sports betting. On the subject though of, you mentioned of the Georgia Bulldog, the whole betting conflict. So what's always interesting to me is when I not necessarily people who are creating content, but just the betters of the world is there is a heavy amount of personal bias when it comes to betting, but it's always
Hmm.
interesting to me that people bet on their teams to win, because my mindset has always been creating a win-win. Like, if I'm doing something, I want to make sure I have some level of happiness at the end of the day. So if my team loses, I have more money. If my team wins, my team wins. And so that's how I don't there's I'm not saying for somebody to bet to do that, but I mean that's always been my mindset of, if I'm going to bet on my team, then I'm going to bet on them to do the opposite. So I'm not completely saddened and distraught at the end of the day. So it's interesting that you brought that up there. So I know again you had previously referenced something happened here in 2020. So I think right now we're maybe in a timeline like 3 years before that, maybe like 2017.
Yeah.
Did other opportunities from other networks or whatever maybe come to fruition during this time, or was this kind of the main thing that led into this pandemic situation that I'm eagerly awaiting?
Yeah, yeah. Well, before the pandemic, luckily, fortunately, I became a contributor for Dr. Drew on HLN. So this was 2016, 2017. And then from contributing to Dr. Drew, I began contributing to Michaela on HLN 2017, 2018. Michaela was I don't know if you remember Michaela on HLN, but she had an afternoon block, I want to say from like 12 p.m. West Coast time to around 2-ish, I want to say. And I would hop on Michaela and contribute my sports slash socio-political commentary on everything from I remember I did a hit on how Sports Illustrated was, using women's bodies, or I say using, how it was highlighting women's bodies and one of its issues, and the models were nude, and what I thought about that. There was one hit that I did. It actually may have been on CNN because at this time I started doing HLN contributing. Michaela, which is also on HLN, but also CNN domestic and international. So the same family, but I remember hopping on talking about when Colin Kaepernick was kneeling and, Donald Trump's reaction to that. I talked about the Miss America swimsuit controversy in context. I competed in the Miss America pageant system. Quick little history lesson here. There are two major pageant systems, national pageant systems in America. You have the Miss USA pageant system, you have the Miss America pageant system. The Miss America pageant system is a scholarship system where you are literally competing to pay for your college or get reimbursed for your academics. Miss USA is more of just like a straight beauty contest. They're both beauty contests, but Miss America leans into academics and it also leans into having to have a platform. So every Miss America pageant contestant on the local, national level has to have something that they're passionate about. Mine was performing arts. Okay. So I remember talking about how Miss America was getting rid of the swimsuit competition because a lot of people looked at that as being degrading to women. And you know, I defended pageant contestants' willingness to still go through the swimsuit competition because I felt and I still feel that it is a woman can present her body the way that she wants to present her body. And no one's forcing you to be in a swimsuit on a stage. But anyway, that's my long-winded rant. That was one of the things that I talked about. So it didn't just cover like politics and sports. It was also cultural issues that I talked about. 16, 17, 18, 19-ish on CNN.
So at this point, uh, 2018, 2019, right before this pandemic
Mm,
shuts down the entire world,
yeah.
um, how many different, even if you were just doing like these spot segments for like the CNN and everything else you're mentioning, how
Mhm.
many different pools in terms of sports and or sports betting broadcast opportunities where you're how many pools were your toes dipped into at this point? Because it seems like you're kind of like, I mean, again, juggling a million different things,
Juggling.
which
Yeah.
you clearly crush, but how many different things up until this point?
So during that time frame, it was really mostly just CNN and HLN. And then there was a little stint on a show called Daily Blast Live, which filmed out of Denver, Colorado, which I absolutely loved. It was a Tegna property. Um, that it was that, but also Trevis, there wasn't really a lot of sports betting. Like there was because again, this was when I guess what FanDuel, DraftKings, don't quote me on the years. I guess you probably could quote me on when these became legal books. But it still wasn't something that people were talking about on air without a stigma attached to it. So I wasn't propping up, pun intended. I wasn't propping up sports betting content in my on-air segments. It was really sports, politics, socio-political conversations, culturally relevant conversations. Yeah.
I think so. Year wise, when the whole Supreme Court stuff and sports betting became an opportunity to be legal was 2018. But
Mhm.
and some people credit that as well. Of course, I mean that had to happen for everything else to happen. But the moment in my life when I knew like, oh holy crap, like things are changing. I mean, of course that was the catalyst and that was necessary. But it's when we saw odds on ESPN segments on TV for the first time. I was like, because that was something where like that was every sports thing was so opposed, like you can't do any of this stuff, and that wasn't immediately following the legality, so that took a little bit. But we're like, just turn on TV for the first time. Wait, for the matchups today that says like minus 5.5, holy crap, they're actually adding lines and odds. I'll go, okay, this industry is definitely becoming something much bigger than we thought when the ESPNs are including it. And then of course we eventually got the ESPN Sportsbook, RIP, and
RIP.
than everything
ESPN.
else. So now we've kind of got ourselves to 2020, which uh, I mean the most interesting part is 2020. The pandemic like affected every single person in terms of
Everything.
every industry, but it's interesting to me because all I would say. Probably 100% of my guests up to this point are in the sports space of all the episodes we've done on this podcast. So it's interesting to see like how it affected like everything that went on. And I going back on my end real quick is the point that I knew that it was more serious than I could possibly imagine. If you were to have bet me my house and my car that
Hmm.
March Madness would not happen, I would have
Oh,
gladly taken that offer because I go, there's no way they
yeah.
monetize the crap out of this. There's no way they're going to give up all of that because there's this illness that's going around. And as soon as they said March Madness, the entirety of the tournament is canceled. I go, okay, I need to find another career because this can't exist without sports.
Right.
So let's go into your story now of how that shifted everything for you.
I mean, I do have to like I have to preface this by saying my heart goes out to every single person who experienced loss, um, family, who couldn't be with their families because of COVID and the restrictions. And um, I, I'm very sensitive to that
Yeah,
because that was not my experience. Thankfully, my family was healthy. And I mean, I lost extended church members, for example, but like my nuclear family, like we were all healthy and safe. And so because we were all healthy and safe, I was able to be still. We talk about being still and having to sit with your thoughts and be reflective because we were all safe, happy, healthy. I was able to do that with a clear head and use COVID as an opportunity to recalibrate and reset. But again, I say that with the utmost
yeah,
sensitivity because I know that is not everyone's reality. Um, but for me, that was my reality. I was able to say, well, shit, like, what is next? Like, I can't do anything. I mean, I had some success, some success as on air talent, but I wasn't famous. I hate to use the word famous, but I wasn't a highly sought after talent, if you will. And we saw during that time, it was the people who were household names who were getting phone calls. It was like, I'm not risking COVID or getting sick for this no-name girl, Erica. So that really made me say, well, do I want to go to law school? Because I was pre-law. Part of the story I forgot to mention, I was pre-law when I went to Georgia. Do I want to go to law school? Do I want to move to Georgia? Like, do I want to move to Australia? I love Australia. I think I had been in 2010, 2009. Like, do I want to go back? But that time really made me say, I'm going to give a career in sports my all. Now, with that in mind, I still do have my commercial agent, but I really had to tell her, like, you don't have to send me on any more auditions. Like, after we kind of started coming out of the pandemic, so like 2021-ish, middle to end, I really stopped putting energy into auditioning because even doing the CNN, HLN, domestic, international from 2016, 2018, 2019, I was still auditioning. going back to having irons and different fires, I was still going on commercial auditions. But once I was like, the world is going to end, I'm going to die and won't have anything to put on my headstone that's noteworthy. Let me figure some shit out and focus. And I told my agent, yeah, like you can keep me on your roster. I love you. I love our relationship, but I need to not put energy toward getting sides or copy, whatever, and auditioning for commercials. And 2021 is when I started at Fox Sports.
So
Oh,
I
I'm
understand.
lying. Wait, no, I'm not lying. That's right. 2021 Fox Sports. Yes.
I like I like I asked, am I lying? I'm like, I don't know. Are you lying? Uh, so I understand that thought process. It wasn't just let me focus on my sports career. It was let me focus solely on my sports career with a new opportunity, which is kind of what you were alluding to just now. Of hey, I'm going to give it my all. Then it's not just focusing on all those different things that you were doing in 2019. So now, how did that Fox opportunity come about?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I had started interviewing at Fox Sports 2016. Yeah, I had started making inroads at Fox Sports 2016, 2017. And started learning who some of the high level executives were, literally just blind emailing them. But luckily, I'd had, somewhat of a resume. I could point to my CNN content, my HLN content, my Tegna content. It wasn't like I didn't have a body of work. I had a, nice website. Was writing at that point. I had a had a blog called The Hottie's Handbook to Sports. So I had like a place, a hub where my writing was. And there was just never anything for me at the company. And I just continued to nurture those relationships. And not only did I nurture the relationships that I, built on my own, I would find somebody else and say, hey, I know Trevis, Fox Sports. I know Trevis works at Fox Sports, and he told me to reach out to you. Lies. And that's just how I built that network. And then 2020, I had a Zoom, I don't know if you did this during the pandemic, but we were all having these Zooms and these meetings and these coffee meetups over Zoom and like drinking over Zoom and talking over Zoom and meeting folks. And so I had a meeting with who is now my mentor, who was one of the executive EVPs at Fox Sports Comms, Terry Hines, and we had like a random Zoom meetup. Like I like harassed her admin until I got on her calendar. Again, it was the pandemic, so everyone was home. I know you're home. All you gotta do is log on to the Zoom. And ironically enough, I did not get my Fox Sports job from Terry. I just knew enough people and I had enough names that I could drop when I was going through the interviewing process with the recruiter. I think that gave me a certain credibility. And I think I started interviewing for that job in July of 2021. And then the job that I interviewed for, my eventual boss ended up getting it. And then in October, my boss, who had interviewed for the job that I was interviewing for, ended up bringing me on the team in a more of an associate role.
So yeah, that is a reoccurring theme that we get to the most of any of the themes on all of these episodes is kind of what you were talking about there on the terms of networking. So it's very, very important to make sure that you're not only are you networking and meeting everybody, because even though your friend wasn't the catalyst to get you this opportunity, it was still there's fragments that of that relationship that still kind of helped here, where I can't like stress this enough to anybody who's watching this and wanting to do something, not just in this space, but in general. A network the crap out of everything. Like go to places where the people are that you want to be working with or you want to be part of. But the biggest part that definitely not an issue with you here is you have to also be a good person, because just because everybody knows who you are, that doesn't mean that's going to help if nobody likes you. So
Oh,
if you're not a nice person or not, and I don't mean like constantly like not nice, because there's still people that like will put on a show that they're nice, and then they'll talk to you one on one about like I'll have Joe Schmo talks to me. He's like, oh yeah, Erica, she talks too much, all this other stuff. She blah blah blah, and they'll just like, I'm like, whoa whoa whoa, like maybe they didn't know that I had a relationship with Erica, and so now all of a sudden that person's not part of my circle anymore. And so the two biggest things that can help you in your career and that have helped me tremendously is network and
Yep.
also just be a good person. It's not
Yeah.
rocket science. It's not hard to do. It's actually it's harder to be a bad person than it is to be a good person. But for whatever reason, some of those people still exist and it doesn't make any sense.
But you know what? Let's have a little therapy session right here, Travis, because I think that the reason we as people, as humans, act in less than appealing ways or are nefarious in our actions is because there's something in us that is yelling insecure. I think insecure
Yeah.
people act in ways that hurts, at least on the surface seems to hurt others, but really just hurts themselves. And so that's what makes bad people. Bad people are bad actors because they're insecure. They're not sure of themselves. They have chips on their shoulders. They feel like the world has done them wrong. So, if anyone out there listening or watching, if you are one of those people who finds yourself mistreating others, whether it's gossiping or, you know, not keeping your word or not being reliable, I think you have to really ask yourself, what about me is making me show up in the world as a person that's not promoting positivity and that's not moving forward and propelling myself to the next level? Because I wish it was as easy as people just being good people, but it's not. It's not. I think it's a
Yeah.
gift. I think it's a gift to have the heart to be able to show up in the world as a good person.
I mean, I guess yeah. So I guess what I would meant to say is that logically speaking, it should be the easiest thing to do. But yes, there are people that I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Where I also want to say that like it's not necessarily, um, well, it is a lot part of what you said, but it's also how I view it as if I'm here and the
Mm-hmm.
person is here, if I tell person C that this person's actually here, then I'm viewed in a
Hmm.
higher light because I brought this person down a few pegs, and that mindset is disastrous
It is.
networking wise because that
Yes.
stuff gets around very quickly.
Yes.
Uh,
And I like what you said about networking. I think networking gets a bad rap. Like people turn their nose up at networking because it sounds cliche. And I've heard so many people say, I don't want to network because networking is fake and networking is phony. But honey, get over yourself because it is all about who you know. It's all about relationship building. It is all about literally building your network. No man is an island. No one lives in a silo. And the people who are islands and the people who do live in silos are those people who never really maximize their full potential because they're so busy trying to figure it out for yourself. Like you can still be one of the smartest people in the room, but please trust me and believe that there is someone who is as smart, who is as accomplished, more accomplished, whose network can help you get to the next level. So I really want for people to dispel the myth that networking is all about being phony. Like when you're meeting people, you should be trying to be your most genuine, authentic self, not just to extract stuff from people, but really to forge relationships because networking is not about, oh, let me talk to Trevis so he can give me a job recommendation. No, it's like, let me talk to Trevis, learn about his journey, find out, what he's thinking, pick his brain about things that I don't know about. It's not just about
yeah.
asking somebody for a job. I think that's what people often think networking is, and that's not it.
So, long story short, Eric and I are launching a Dr. Phil talk show. This is the surprise for everybody listening and watching to this point. Let's get back on the chronological train. We're now in 2022,
Yes.
working at Fox Sports, and I think that I first met you. I want to say in 2024.
Uh-huh.
So is from the timeline of essentially then the Fox Sports opportunity for the
Mhm.
next 2 or 3 years? Is it kind of just that, but growing more into Fox Sports and more with opportunities, or were other
Yeah,
things happening for over the next few years?
other things are happening, honey. Other things are happening. Sheesh. Okay, while I've been at Fox Sports, I was the on-air talent and social commentator for Fox Bet. I know we said rest in peace, ESPN Bet. Rest in peace, Fox Bet. So on-air talent for Fox Bet. And let's see what else. On-air talent for NASCAR Digital Media, covering sports betting. Um, Contribute to Fox 11. Those are the three main ones. And the most recent one is not even in the sports betting space, but the strictly sports space. I am the host and one of the producers of a show called Her Corner, which is a sports and lifestyle show that highlights the women in combat sports, their journeys. And it's not just boxing, is combat, I mean, it's wrestling, it's any facet of the combat sports spectrum. So those are just a few things that have spawned out of my visibility being a journalist at Fox Sports covering sports betting.
So there's a lot of stuff. I mean, that's just I guess the theme of the life of Erica. But there's a lot of stuff happening all at the same time.
Yes.
So that's pretty much gets us to where we are in 2026 with all of the opportunities you continue to have and then grow from there. So the thing that I kind of like wrapping these episodes up with is for us to kind of go back over the entire thing that we just went through, the entire chronological map of early interest in something sports related, and then all the way to where we are now in 2026. The term I
Mhm.
like to use is butterfly effect, where there's a lot of things from point A to point Z that are both in your control and outside of your control. But if you were to pick one event, one butterfly effect that you believe is the most important catalyst that got you to where you are today, which one would that be?
One, Travis?
One.
Oh, that's not fair.
That's how the game is played.
Oh, I don't like rules. Jeez Louise. Okay. If I had to pick one that got me to where I am today, it would be saying yes to my job, my original job at Fox Sports. And I say that because the job I ended up getting was not the job that I interviewed for. So that's the first thing. And my boss, who is so dear to me, I don't know if I can shout out, his name is Vic. Vic, who is no longer at Fox Sports, but I remember talking to him in the interview process, and he essentially was like, Erica, this can lead to great things. And at that time, 2021, again, we're 3 years into sports gambling being legal. I'd worked in sports gambling when it was shady and had a negative stigma attached to it. And so I hadn't really worked in sports betting full time since 2013, 2014. So when this opportunity came up, I was like, okay, well, I'll do it as long as I can be the head of like be the head of the team. But that wasn't what was in the cards for me. So when the other opportunity came up, I was like, well, A, if I'm not going to be the head of the team, then why would I want to be in this industry that people are going to turn their nose up at? And it's not the original job that I interviewed for. But my boss, who I consider a friend and a mentor, encouraged me to say yes. And I am so thankful that I did, honestly, Trevis, because it got me to like that. Saying yes to that helped set up so much more success that happened in succession in the next 3.5, 4 years. But it wasn't just saying yes to that, it was saying yes to so many other things that came after that first yes. So, yeah, that's what I would say would be
See,
my
you were
one.
able to. It wasn't necessarily finding one. It's more of the lead of all of the ones. And so, yes, the Fox Sports opportunity. They're saying yes to that. So that
Yeah.
gets us to present time. I want to thank you very, very much for hopping on here and sharing your story with us. If anybody wants to reach out to Erica directly, you can reach her on LinkedIn, send her a message. I can't guarantee she'll reply, but it sounds like I believe that she will.
When I check them, so if you send me a LinkedIn message and I don't check it, it's really just because I just haven't checked it. But you might have more luck hitting me up at my social at Erica Renee D. I will check those more frequently.
Well, there you go. Thanks again for hopping on here, and I hope you guys enjoyed the show.
Thank you, Travis.